It's been nearly 14 years since we got the last Prince of Persia game, which was the Forgotten Sands back in 2010. This year we got a brand new entry in the franchise in The Lost Crown, and this game does things a little bit differently, and I think that's a good thing. Now, a lot of people that are familiar with the Prince of Persia franchise are probably more familiar with the 3D action games, but The Lost Crown is actually a side-scrolling Metroidvania style game. In this game you play as Sargon. He's a member of an elite group of warriors called the Immortals. And after a brief intro, you find out the prince has been kidnapped, he's been brought to Mount Kof, and now you have to go with the Immortals to go save him. When you arrive at Mount Kof, you find out that the whole place is cursed, and then you gotta figure out what the heck's going on, and you gotta find the prince and bring him back alive. And now you may have caught on that from what I've been describing for this character, that Sargon is not a prince. I think there's maybe only one other Prince of Persia game where you actually don't play as the prince. But that's okay, because Sargon's a really cool character. He's got a great backstory, and it totally unfolds throughout the game, and I think you will like this character a lot. Now, the story of this game unfolds as you explore the area, find different characters, have dialogue with those characters. Something I found kind of odd about the dialogue here is that when you're having a conversation with somebody, there's just a still image on each side, which is totally fine. The image looks like it's something kind of hand-drawn, which is nice, but say your character's on this side, on one dialogue, and then you have a different conversation with somebody else and your character's on this side, they 100% just horizontally flip that image. So like in some conversation I've seen Sargon's hair goes this way and some it goes the other way depending on the side of the text you're on. And ultimately it doesn't really affect the dialogue or the game itself. I think it's kind of a weird choice. If it was like a small indie game made by one or a small handful of people on a team, I would definitely just not even think about it. I wouldn't even mention it, but this is actually still a pretty big budget game for what it is. Ultimately, like I said, it doesn't actually really affect anything. I just thought it was kind of weird and wanted to bring it up. The story itself is pretty interesting. There's a few twists and turns, and some of it's a little bit predictable, but I thought that for what it was a really good story. Now, of course, I really don't want to go too far into the story because a lot goes on. Like I said, a lot of twists and turns, so I'm not going to spoil any of that for you. I'm going to let you play the game for yourself. As I mentioned earlier in the video, they decided to go with the side-scrolling Metroidvania style for this game, and so if you're not familiar with this genre, it's basically like a very platform and sometimes combat-heavy kind of game where there's a big kind of labyrinth of a map that's all interconnected, and you have to find your way through the map, and as you gain different abilities, those abilities unlock your way, essentially. So if there's an area that you see a ledge you can't get to, there's probably some kind of double jump or a dash or something that will let you get up to that ledge at some point. Platforming is a big part of Metroidvania as a genre, and Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown just hits it out of the park with this. Now, Prince of Persia has always really been a platforming heavy series, especially the 3D action games, and this game does not disappoint. The platforming is super tight, super precise. There's tons of different platforming challenges that aren't necessary to complete to go through the story, but will get you items and things like that, and they're just really rewarding. Like once you complete them, you're like, wow, I really feel just like really good about like being able to complete that because it was just so challenging. And now these platforming challenges are difficult but not impossible, and there are things in accessibility features where they help out and allow you to skip some of these things. So if you're not great at the platforming aspect, they'll help you out there. And accessibility features is something we'll talk about way more later on in the video because there's a lot here. I will have to say though, if I have one negative thing to say about the platforming is that I'm gonna try not to spoil like what the ability is or like where you get it or anything like that. There's an ability where the button you press is like the right stick. I think you could probably change what buttons do what in the menu, but having to click the right stick while you're in the middle of platforming is just a really kind of a weird choice for me. It was something that was very difficult for me to get used to. Eventually I kind of did, but it was still one of those where like I really had to think about it when pressing it. I don't know what they could have done to improve that, but I don't know. It was just definitely just kind of a weird choice for me. Previous Prince of Persia games did have combat. A lot of it was basic button mashing and not a lot of like combos or anything too complicated, but in The Lost Crown, combat, you have to be good at it. I'm personally not good at combat in games, so I had used some of the accessibility features that I was mentioning to kind of tone down some of that combat, but combat is super, super precise. So you can do like a parry or an enemy attacks you, and you can press the parry button and you'll basically hit their attack away, and you can get some hits in. It's very precise. You have to get it almost basically hit the button exactly as the enemy is about to strike you. And if you don't, if you miss a parry, it's actually more devastating because you lose more health missing a parry than if you were to just let him hit you to begin with. So it is pretty tough. But there are some really cool things with parries. So the enemy will glow red when you know that it's an attack that you can't parry and that you need to dash. And they'll also glow yellow when there's a special parry. And if you are able to successfully connect the parry on the yellow flash, it actually does a really cool animation. And then you can actually get health back from it. And every enemy type has one of these kinds of attacks, and some do more of it than others. But when you see that yellow flash, you know, like if you're in danger and you're got a bunch of enemies nearby and you need some health, you know that if you get that parry right, it'll help you out. And now the combat here, you have two swords, and I try not to spoil anything with, you know, what you get for abilities and stuff, but the marketing does show that you get a bow that you can use as a regular like bow and arrow, or you throw it like a boomerang kind of thing. And there's some puzzles and different combat stuff that you can do with that. But you have the two swords, you have that, and you have something what's called Athra. And if I were to describe it in a way, if you're familiar with anime, and this game, it was very inspired by anime, it's kind of like chakra, like in like Naruto, or like any kind of like that's like the energy. So when you fight enemies, you build up Athra, and you get these different Athra strikes that you can do. And that's really cool animation. They really hit the enemies hard. But if you get hit by enemies, you lose Athra. So it's kind of like a balance where like if you have to start getting really good at combat in order to really build up that Athra to get those Athra surges to hit those really heavy attacks. And that's really useful in boss battles specifically. Now, I found the combat to be, like, you know, after you get used to the timing and everything, it becomes actually pretty easy to do for like the regular enemies, and you get like the big boss battles where they really kind of do a specific pattern. So you really do get to learn how the boss is attacking and how you can parry and dodge and things like that. So it really does do a good job to teach you. If you keep losing in a battle or keep losing to a particular enemy, you really just are just getting better, like any kind of difficult game, like a Soulsborne game or something like that. Now, it really wouldn't be a Metroidvania without some kind of collectible, and Prince of Persia Lost Crown has a lot of different collectibles to find. You got things like the Xerxes coins, you have different skins you can pick up, you have, every time you fight an enemy, you get these time crystals, and you can find them in treasure chests. You can find them kind of like on walls and ceilings around. So as you're exploring, you'll find them and you can break them and collect the crystals. It's a side quest where you have to find these like jars of sand, and when you break the sand open, you get part of a story, and the story itself kind of coincides with the story of the game, so it kind of adds onto it. It's not necessary to do, but you do get a lot of really cool items. So you get like extra health bars or like extra amulet slots, things like that. So it becomes really useful. And something I almost forgot to mention is that you get this kind of necklace that you wear, and you get to attach amulets to it, and the amulets will help out in different aspects of the game. So you can have things that basically like give you a dead defense to certain things. So there's one that gives you defense to poison damage being something that like hurts you slowly over time, or something that helps you against like fire damage. Or there's one that basically brings you back to life. If you run out of health, it'll bring you back with like a little bit of health without having to actually like have your character die and go back to one of the save points. And they're pretty balanced. So something like the amulet that brings you back to life takes up 3 slots. So you really have to strategize how you want your character to be. And as you get more amulet slots that you can collect, you can add more things, and you can add more amulets and have more effects. But you have basically a limited amount of things that you can do with these. My favorite, though, is there was one that when you do a successful parry, it creates a bubble, and the bubble, anything inside the bubble is affected by like a time slowdown. So when you do a parry, even if there's like a bunch of enemies nearby, they're all moving super slow, and you can get a lot of good attacks in. And you can upgrade these amulets, so you can upgrade the time bubble and how long it exists, and basically how big the bubble is. So if you can upgrade the amulet to as upgraded as possible, it creates like a really big bubble, and all the enemies with it are completely basically stopped in their tracks for a couple seconds. And it's becomes really useful for someone like me who maybe isn't good at the combat in this game. And there's a lot of different lore items, so it'll basically fill out the background lore of the universe and like things that are going around on the mountain. So different characters that have traveled to the mountain that are being affected by the curse of the mountain and all those other things. It's really cool to pick these up and read them. And I mean, ultimately, you don't even need to, but it is really cool to see. I personally think that if you're going to put skins in a game, that it should really be something that's like, that completely changes and alters the look of the character. A lot of the skins in The Lost Crown, they don't really do a ton. They'll change like the skin tone and like the color of the outfit that Sargon's already wearing. There was one that was really cool that made him like his skin like pink, like Pepto-Bismol pink, and like changed a bunch of other like colors and made it like really out of this world. But I mean, all the other ones basically like slightly change his skin tone, maybe make his belt purple or something like that. So I really don't. I feel like these were added in almost as like a afterthought. Now there were some other skins though that were based on previous like Ubisoft games. Like there was a Warrior Within outfit that you can wear, or there's a part of the game where they show off Sargon wearing like rags, like when he was like early on in his warrior days kind of thing, and you can get that outfit, or you could get the outfit that's from Immortals Phoenix Rising. But those things, like the Warrior Within and the Immortals Phoenix Rising ones, are in the deluxe version only, so you have to pay an extra $10 for those. And now I say this because I want to compare skins in this game to something like Jedi Survivor. Now in Star Wars Jedi Survivor, you could change your hairstyle. Basically, you change your hairstyle, your beard style, the outfit you're wearing, and the colors of the outfit, and the color of your lightsaber, and like there's like 4 different parts of your lightsaber that you can completely change, and they have a ton of different things, and you can change all the colors, and then the blade color. There's so much customization in Jedi Survivor to where I'm 100% okay with having skins in that, because there's so many different ways you could customize Cal Kestis in that game. Whereas these are just kind of color palette swaps, and they really could have been left out. And the map, as huge as it is, probably could have made it a little bit smaller, just to leave out those areas where all you're getting is a skin. And for me, there's almost nothing worse than having to do a really crazy platforming challenge, and then the prize is a skin. It's just kind of something that it feels a little like it's maybe not worth doing. Hey, Future Jeff here. I just want to talk about a couple extra things that I forgot in my original recording, and one of those things is how big the map is for this game. So I'm going to go to the map and I'm going to zoom way out. It's going to be a little bit blurred out in the video. I'm going to do that on purpose, just so you don't spoil anything specific about the map. But look how big this map is. It is so big. I would say it's sort of bordering on how big Hollow Knight's map is. I wouldn't say it's really anywhere near as big, but it's such a big map for what this game is, and there's so many things in it. And while we're talking about the map, there are these trees everywhere called whack trees. Now these can basically, when you interact with them, that recovers your health. It resets any amulets that you have that have a limited use. So there's an amulet equipped right now that gives me 3 extra bars of health, so you see those 3 yellow bars there. If I run out of that health, I can only get that back by interacting with one of these trees. As well as there's an amulet that when you lose all your health, it brings you back with a little bit of health, and that will be used up. You can use it one time, and then the whack tree will basically reset it and let you use it again. This also replenishes your arrows and your potions and things like that as well, and these are all over the place. And what you'll find is you'll see the kind of wind gust, kind of like gently the gentle breeze with the leaves going towards it. Anywhere on the map where there's going to be a whack tree, you'll see these leaves and the gentle breeze going towards it. So it gives you an idea of where the next one is. Also, this is where you set up what amulets you have equipped and what Aether Surges you have equipped. Now you can't equip these anywhere else. You have to be interacting with one of these trees to do it. So they're everywhere though, and so you never have to worry about, you don't have to worry about finding one. Now I really like the art style in this game. It may be a side-scrolling game, but the game was definitely developed 100% 3D and then just had the camera perspective set to it like a 2D plane. Everything in the background is moving and alive, and all the characters are fully fleshed out on the screen. There's even times where you could see enemies in the background or even in the foreground, and they are moving around. You could see them come up and then jump into the main perspective, and you have to fight them. And it really like gives you the idea that everything does exist in the 3D space. You just happen to be just looking at it from this kind of camera angle. And because of that, you have some really cool effects. Like the Athra surges can, like, the camera can switch and show Sargon doing some cool like animations and like different things, and different cutscenes can move around in 3D space, and that makes a lot of the different effects in this game really cool. And especially, like I said, the cutscenes. When you have to battle a boss, they have a really cool cutscene. When you encounter like one of your buddies and there's like a big event going on, like there's a ton of different things going on, and the camera can move around in a 3D space, and it's really cool. And like I was saying before, this game is very, very inspired by anime. I watched a couple of videos from the developers talking about the art style and their direction for this, and it is very inspired by anime. And you can tell when you're playing this because of just how almost like over the top everything is, and how just extravagant some of the things that are just flashy and just wild. And I think it really adds to this game a lot. I played this game on the Switch, and I purposefully bought this game on the Switch because I knew that was going to be the platform where it performed the least well, because I wanted to see how well it did on something as low performing as the Switch. And to be 100% real, almost the entire time it was stuck at a 60 frame per second frame rate. Almost the whole time, especially during gameplay. It rarely ever slowed down. It really only slowed down during really heavy cutscenes, but that was really the only time performance really took a hit at all. And that's really amazing to see, especially in a game that's released this year on the Switch. All that said though, I mean, this game does have a few bugs. I know that they're working on squashing some of those bugs, but I've seen certain things like the camera getting stuck. I talked to a certain character, the camera was stuck on them, and then they, for whatever reason, the dialogue ended, and I couldn't do anything. All I could do was kind of walk back and forth in one little spot, and if I walked further over to the direction that had come from, eventually the camera broke off and then went back to where I was, and for whatever reason, the dialogue continued where I was, way away from him. And these are things that really aren't affecting necessarily everybody. I've seen so many people post on Twitter their own bugs that they've seen, where one of the cutscenes, the camera broke, and you could see like the behind the scenes things in the cutscenes that they kind of leave there knowing that the camera is not going to see it. So you get like the character just kind of like floating in space, kind of like T-posing, just sitting there. And, otherwise the camera wouldn't have seen that. But the camera is now stuck here, so everything is just going on in a way that it normally does, but you're now seeing all the weird stuff that, the camera just wouldn't normally see. I've had some people have weird issues with, and I experienced this myself, where there's kind of like a training area in the game. As you gain new abilities, you can do the trainings, and they'll give you time crystals for doing the trainings, and as well as you'll learn new combos that you can use those abilities in. But there's one particular one that when you press the button to do it, it doesn't work. And you just can't complete that training. You have to exit it. For whatever reason, you have to completely shut the game down, close the game out, and reload it, and then it will let you. Weird bug. It's an easy fix, but something that really shouldn't be happening. All right, now we're going to talk about the accessibility features, which is something that I've spoken about a couple times in this video, and accessibility features is one of the things that this game really, really excels at. I'm actually most impressed about how many accessibility features in this game are meant for people who have any kind of visual or audio impairments. So there's like a colorblind mode. There's a mode that I think is like a high contrast mode. There's a way to change different HUD elements in different sizes. There's a way to remove screen shake and like color flashing and things like that. There's ways to change the text on the screen to make the text bigger if you have difficulty reading text on like a screen, or if you're sitting far away from the screen and you need that text to be bigger to be able to read it. All those are there. And subtitles are on by default, and you can do things like have like an outline of the text, have a completely black background behind the text to make it so much easier for you to read. There's different sliders for different parts of the audio, so if you're having an issue hearing the the dialogue, the spoken parts, you can turn that up and turn down the other sounds. It's just, for these things, there's so many different features that they didn't need to put in, and they did, and it's just wonderful. Another thing that they added in, something that's really nice for someone who may not be super familiar with the Metroidvania genre, and playing Metroidvanias, getting lost is kind of part of it, and there's a lot of people that just maybe don't like getting lost in a game, and I think that's fine. They added a guided mode that gives you way more of a hint on where to go. It doesn't like tell you exactly which path to take, but it'll put a spot on the map and say, the next story element that you need to get to is right there. And so you do have to figure out how to get there, but it tells you exactly where it is. So even if you haven't unlocked the map in that area, you still know where to go. So you still have an idea of what path you might need to take, which is really nice for new players or players, even if you're really familiar with this genre and you're like, yeah, I love Metroidvanias, but I hate getting lost. They have this feature for you. There's even a method to teleport past really difficult platforming aspects. So if there's a part of the game where you need to do a bunch of platforming and it's required to get to a part, so like if it's a part of the required story, you can open up the settings, turn on this option, and then it will allow you to create a portal to the end of that platforming segment and just go right to it. Not have to worry about any of that stuff in between. And I think something like this is great because I know I personally am really good at the platforming. I'm less good at the combat part, but there are people who are way better at the combat and just don't want to have to deal with like the crazy platforming in this game. Platforming is pretty challenging in this, so being able to just teleport past something that's way too hard is just really nice. And now combat, like I was saying, I keep saying I'm not great at combat in games, and they have a lot of options here. So you can turn down how much health enemies have, I believe. You can turn down how much damage enemies do to you. You can turn down how much Athra you gain from fighting enemies and how much you lose from fighting enemies. You can so many things you can turn down. You can change the level of preciseness you need to parry, and I put that on low right away. I was not good at that, but after having that setting on low, you get a lot of practice in. If you want to switch it back, you can. If you want to keep it the way it is, I did. That's awesome. There's so many different ways to change up the difficulty of this game for any skill level. All right, so there's two editions of this game. There's a standard edition that has just the base game. It's $50 US. And there's a deluxe version that has the base game and a couple skins and an amulet and a couple other things. That's $60 US. And if you pre-ordered the deluxe edition, you also got 3 days early access, which is the one that I got. I actually didn't realize that right away, but I was able to play a little bit early, which was really cool. At this point, the game's already released, so if you buy the deluxe version, you're not going to get that. And so I personally think if you're going to buy this game, you should probably just buy the standard edition. The two skins are cool. If you really want that, go for it. The amulet that you get, it's basically you can equip it. It doesn't use a slot. It's like a free amulet. It's a bird that follows you around, and anytime there's a secret in the area, it chirps to kind of gives you an audio cue that you might want to kind of figure out if there's anything hidden around. It was very useful in me finding as many secrets as I did. I think I ended the game at like 90, somewhere between 94 and 96%, and it was very useful. But if you don't find anything, sometimes it just keeps on chirping, and it's just really, really annoying. And there were areas where I think it was chirping to tell me that there was a secret, like hidden doorway that I'd already found, because it would fly over to something that I'd already been through. So I don't know if that's a bug that they need to fix, but I don't think it's necessarily all that worth it, because there are ways that you can kind of figure out where hidden things are. But for $50, I think the standard edition has everything you need. It's a pretty good price for this game. It's a really long game. If you try to find all the secrets, it's probably somewhere around 25 to 30 hours worth of play. And now I always end my video telling you whether or not I think you should buy this game. I don't give a game a number rating. I feel like that, at least for me, it's maybe a little bit too arbitrary. I say that Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a must play. Now, it is a Ubisoft game, so it's very possible that this might go on sale at some point. If you want to play this right away, I think it's fully worth the $50 that they sell it for. But if you want to wait a little bit and get it on sale, I totally get that. But I think you should absolutely play this game. If you're a fan of Metroidvanias, just like I am, you can go ahead and click right here on my face and subscribe to the channel. I'll be making a lot more Metroidvania videos coming up. There's a lot coming out this year. So go ahead and click on my face and subscribe. Make sure notifications are on so you don't miss any of my videos. Otherwise, though, I'll see you on the next one.